Welcome to Kardec Radio, dear friends. This is Kardec Radio at 11 p.m. Back with the studies on evolution into worlds. Yes, we have been studying several chapters together, and we had to give a 2-day pause for personal purposes, but we are glad to be back. Happy to be able to learn more together and to boost our consciousness towards our immortal goals. So, welcome, dear friends, and join us in this beautiful opportunity to learn with André Luiz about our multimillenary pilgrimage. Let us not forget that André Luiz brings to us a new understanding about ourselves in two realms, no longer ourselves as the physical being separated from the spirit, but connected and intertwined to a point that we evolve. By using matter, we evolve and we evolve towards God. We are going to begin today with a prayer, okay? So we can feel more permeable to the loving presence of the good spirits who are here with us to guide our new understanding. Okay, so welcome to this prayerful moment before we begin our study tonight. Dear Mother, Father God, we rejoice, feeling the greatness of life, feeling the protection of the loving spirits, and the beauty of life unfolding in multi-dimensions. May we all feel the presence of our protecting spirits and the spirit teachers who want us to rid ourselves of ignorance and experience greater fullness of life. We breathe in and out the joy emanated towards us, the perfume of brotherhood and love, asking for protection, for guidance, as we are granted permission to enter a new realm of understanding in our lives. And so be it. Welcome, friends. So let's recap. We have been studying 13 chapters together. 13 days in a row in which we were studying. Actually 14 days, right? Because we started from the very prefaces of the book Evolution into Worlds. And okay, I'm just opening the book here so I can recap with you the beauty of the chapter. So we started with prefaces and then we studied the cosmic fluid, spiritual body, evolution in the spiritual body, automatism in the spiritual body, cells in the spiritual body, evolution in sex, evolution in heredity, evolution in metabolism, evolution in the brain, word and responsibility, existence of the soul, soul and discarnation, soul and fluids. Now we're going to be studying spiritual symbiosis, followed by tomorrow, spiritual vampirism. These topics are so fascinating, and we broke it down in beautiful slides that can help us visualize and feel better these teachings. Let's not forget that this teaching is not a mere knowledge. And you'll see that one day when you study this again, you're going to grasp more and more and more. So it's a book to be read and studied once, twice, 3 times, many, many times. The first time that I studied this book, I was a teenager in Brazil, studying with psychiatrists, biologists, psychologists, physicians in a spiritist center that really focused on helping us understand more about ourselves. Back then, I was like, okay, that's interesting, but I couldn't feel it yet. And then coming to the United States and studying it again, translating the book with a group of friends, I was able to feel more. Now that I am sharing with you through cardiac radio, I can feel more. And I bet that the more we study it together, time and again, we're going to expand our awareness on it. So, you know, even the slides that I am showing to you, they are new. Many of them I had to redo from the study that I presented at SSB and SSBA 6 years ago. And they are much better now because they become more comprehensive, more tangible. So that's the beauty of life. We keep expanding, and Andrea Luiz uses that word in this book, that we were created to expand ourselves. So whenever you feel yourself like staying in the same way, say, no, no, no. Then you expand, 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 always, always, and always. Or you're going to see tonight when we stagnate ourselves, anchor ourselves, intermingling with people, creating symbiosis, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Are you ready? That's an introduction. I hope you're ready. So let's go. Let's go with the spiritual symbiosis, which is chapter 14th of the book Evolution into Worlds by Andrea Luiz through the mediums Chico Xavier and Valdo Vieira. He talks about spiritual symbiosis. So let's see where he begins. He begins by telling us the following about the maintenance of the intelligent principle, the sustenance of the intelligent principle. And he says, the intelligent principle exercised the projection of mental, fragmentary impulses to nurture itself for long ages. Once in the spiritual plane, in the condition of a discarnated human consciousness, it begins to shape new ways of manifestation in favor to support itself, or in favor of supporting itself. Let us observe here the highlights: mental fragmentary impulses and nurture, like sustenance, nutrition. Okay, so we are talking about emissions of thoughts and acquisition of like-minded frequencies that will be nourishing us. So at the end of the day, we're talking about how we nourish ourselves. No wonder cardiac radio has this slogan, nourish your soul with cardiac radio, because we truly understand in spiritism that we nourish ourselves by the very same frequencies that we emit: thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. When we were in previous stages of evolution before the human, we didn't produce continuous thought, it was fragmentary, but thus we created connections to nurture ourselves. He continues to explain to us, in the plant world, with chlorophyll parenchyma, the intelligent principle learned to decipher the secrets of photosynthesis, absorbing luminous energy to produce organic matter, and casting away essential gases that contribute to the balance of the atmosphere. As you can see in the picture, it talks about the cells of the plant and chlorophyll in it being the element that absorbs the energy of the sun and creates this process that we call photosynthesis, eliminating gases that will contribute to many things. Now, at the next stage, the bacteria, the intelligent principle learned the process of chemosynthesis by using the chemical energy consumed in the oxidation of mineral bodies. So take a look at this, okay? I borrowed this slide from Cornell College when they showed to us the process of chemosynthesis, where there is no light, for example, in the deepest part of the oceans, there cannot be photosynthesis, the absorption of sunlight. So what do they do? What do they do? Specialized bacteria split hydrogen sulfide molecules, yes, that come out of the vents. They use the energy obtained by breaking the chemical bonds to create energy storing compounds. Isn't that beautiful? So we're going to see that in every single stage, there is a form of absorption of elements to produce, to synthesize molecules, nutrition that will be beneficial to the body. Okay? So this is a concept that now Andre Luiz tells us. He says, among the higher beings, the intelligent principle devoted to biosynthesis in another exchange of substances in various spheres of physical experience to secure itself under the material and energetic point of view. What is biosynthesis? The process in your body that turns simple structures into more complex structures. So, from photosynthesis to chemosynthesis to biosynthesis. So, at the end of the day, we're talking about the evolution of our nurturing process, transforming external elements into elements, structures that will be beneficial to the sustenance of ourselves. And he continues, accustomed to the phenomenon of anabolism in incorporation of elements that nurture, and catabolism, which is dissimulation, it automates the existence in continuous metamorphosis of the forces that will reach the physiological machine through the food needed to constant restoration of the cell and the balance of organic regulations. Okay, pause, breathe, friends. Don't give up. Don't go away. You know why? Because what comes now is very liberating. Remember, Andre Luiz is bringing this book to us not for mere scientific knowledge, because, and I say mere respectfully, but the goal is not to attain ourselves to the material knowledge, but to observe how material and spiritual work together intertwined, okay? Like this. So he's telling us, central point here, he's talking about we need nutritious elements to live, to survive, inevitably. That's the central element, survival. We need elements to survive. How do we do it? We're incarnated, doing internships in matter, and then in each kingdom, in the plants, we take the energy of the sun, break it down into elements that will be beneficial to the plant organism, maintaining the life of that intelligent principle during that stage of evolution, and at the same time producing structures that will be beneficial to the environment. The bacteria will use the mechanism of chemosynthesis. Then later in higher animals, biosynthesis, meaning we're going to eat, right? Right now as humans, we eat, take food, eat, break it down to take the energy and maintain the vitality of the physical body. To enter the chapter of spiritual symbiosis, Andre Luiz is going to give us a foundation. He's going to explain to us that at the end of the day, we are all searching to preserve ourselves, to nourish ourselves. How are we nourishing ourselves? So let us ask this very question before we continue. How do you spiritually nourish yourself? Besides listening to cardiac radio and watching cardiac radio, how do you do it? Hmm? Through exchange of affection? What is it? Think about it, because right now, Andre Luiz is going to enter a new field. He's going to talk about the synthesis of the mind, how we nourish ourselves mind to mind, how we acquire elements from other minds, exchange ours, and nourish ourselves with it. Is that really what he's saying? Yes, you see. Observe it to ask how you will nourish yourself spiritually. Okay, let's see what he says to us. He then keeps telling us the following. He talks about the beginning of chemosynthesis, mentosynthesis, or mentosynthesis, as it's already explained in some fields of psychology. But we're going to keep it to this way because it may not be necessarily what they mean. Beginning of mentosynthesis, Andre Luiz says, elevated to the generation of uninterrupted thought, the spiritual principle is altered in its individuality, in its particular way of being. So now we have continuous thought, and continuous thought boosts new opportunities for us. As I am emanating, I'm also absorbing. He continues by telling us the following. Since then, the intelligent principle is immersed in operations that have been classified as mentosynthesis. This is so because these operations are based on the exchange of multiform mental fluids through which the intelligent principle emits its own ideas and radiations, absorbing the radiations and ideas of others. Oh my Lord. So we exchange mental fluids. Do you remember when we studied it? Mental fluids, I think, thought particles, and then the stream of this mental formation, which we call mental fluid. I emanate, I absorb. I emanate, I absorb. So he says, the impulse which arose in the embryonic mind by accidental self-interest of ownership regarding the need for food is now conscious desire. Above all, the reproductive instinct became constant emotional attraction. Now he's going to talk about how at the level of human kingdom we are exchanging, okay? We are exchanging consciously. And then he compares our levels to levels of evolution with some stages in nature. So he says, therefore, there appears the need of invariable satisfaction as a stimulus to experience, which foreshadows in the soul the sublime love stuck in selfishness, like the diamond formation in the carbonado, or the black carbon, which is, in a way, we talk about, the diamond within the black carbon or carbonado, as you can see in the picture. So that selfish love he's talking about. Okay. Then he says, we'll put a pause and go back. Let's just continue to see what he's saying, and then we'll go back together. Physical death interrupts the construction and the grounds of property and of affection. Since the human creature presents continuous thought, she feels broken-hearted and distressed every time she breaks free of the carnal adult body. The release of the dense clothing imposes new vibratory conditions as a way of forcing the spiritual principle to a temporary hiding from its own in order to revitalize experiences like the plant needs pruning to exalt itself in renewed self-worth. So he's telling us that we need to nourish ourselves, but when physical death comes, all that attachment to people and things is interrupted. And what usually happens? We feel broken, distressed, anguished, but we are forced to renew ourselves. And it's hard at first. He's going to say numerous times are employed so the human mind gains control of the spiritual body in the circles of more ample conscience, since they must understand the way to lead themselves to the divine glory, as well as being responsible for the debit or credit of the good and evil, joy and pain of their pathway. I'm going to put a pause here, okay, and go back to what we're saying here. And I'm going to go back just so we can talk a little more about it. Okay, there's a lot to break down. Well, don't forget, we're talking about things that are for our own awareness. So, first of all, we need nourishment to sustain ourselves as spiritual principles. We exchanges at the spiritual and the physical level. In each internship, we're learning to nourish ourselves. Then he talks about the fact that as we create a mental current by continuous thought, the mental fluid, we start exchanging it. Remember? We start exchanging it, right? And then what happens next? We're going to absorb what we're emitting. And then at first, in our human evolution, we're attached, we're very selfish, and he compares that stage to the stage of the dark carbon, okay, that will be polished, so we find the diamond inside, okay. So how do we get to that diamond? Incarnation, death, reincarnation, death, reincarnation, death, reincarnation, death. As you can see, death comes to say, stop, no attachment. And you're like, oh no, what am I gonna do now? So, at first, when we were at caveman time, we were pretty scared. We didn't know what to do. Remember previous chapters? He said fear was very present. We didn't know what to do with it. And there are people who, to date, that's why the fear of death, many people are like, oh my gosh, death. And they feel like they are going to have to get rid of everything. They don't know. They don't know what to expect, right? So he says here, there is distress after death, especially for those who are super attached. But it's needed. We need those interruptions. Why? Andre Luiz explains. He tells us to gain maturity. We need to learn how to gain control of our spiritual body. Scale 0 to 10. Where do you think you are today in regards to control of your spiritual body? Spiritual body, how good are you? I know people who say, I can't control it. Well, be careful, because in the afterlife, it's going to be worse. Oh, addictions, for example, right? Oh my gosh, I just feel taken by. In the afterlife, it's going to be worse. So we need to learn how to gain control of our spiritual body. opening your consciousness, he says, and understand that we need to lead ourselves. We must understand, he says, must. The way to lead ourselves to the divine glory, being responsible. So in the afterlife, we're going to face the balance of our lives, what we've done. Oh, but it's so painful. Well, but maturity tells us that we need to do it. We cannot skip away. Why? Because usually when we are still in these beginning steps of knowing it all, we will create symbiosis with loved ones because we're afraid. Look at this. Let me go back to some more of the slides that Andrea Luiz explains, and then we're going to stop again to meditate about ourselves. Okay, so at this point, we're talking about the fact that we need to gain control, as says Andrea Luiz, of our spiritual body. So that's something we need to mark down. Control of our spiritual body. How do I manage my spiritual body? Good question, huh? So let's go back and see what Andrea Luiz is going to tell us. And he says, he tells us the following. Usually we are rebellious, he says, rebellious and attached, removed from beloved ones, and still unable to understand the transformation of our homes. The discarnate mind usually rebels against new lessons of life, which they are called for in different realms, thus remaining fluidically shackled to those to which they attune within blood and desires, communing with their common experience. In this sense, it is reasonable to remember that in their receded past, they automatically learn to breathe and to live right next to the heat and respiration of others. So, unfortunately, he says, we're going to be, uh-oh, we're going to be, let me just make sure that you're following the slides here. Hold on a sec. No. Okay. So there you go. All right. And then comes Andrea Luiz and explains to us that we're rebellious. What happens next? Okay. We're rebellious and attached. Pause, because I don't think this study is important if we don't ask this question. Do you think you're rebellious? Are you that type like, it's either my way or I'll always get what I want no matter how, and I want this person, I want this thing, and that's not determination. Sometimes it's simple rebelliousness, lack of resignation. God is saying, don't go there, don't do it. But we say, I will and I'll do it and I don't care what happens. That's rebelliousness. Because at the end of the day, we're harming people's lives. So I have to be very careful. And then he says to us, attachment. Because we don't know what else to do. That's all that we know. We've been there, done that. And we don't know what else to do. Go to the book Heaven and Hell by Kardec. There are 67 cases in the second part of the book. Okay? Go to Kardec Radio's podcasts. We have audiobooks. Go kardecradio.com, podcasts, audiobooks, Heaven and Hell. You're going to listen to 67 cases in more than 54 different voices. And those 67 cases of different types, we will learn that many of these spirits were just doing the same old thing because they didn't know better. What do you think if you discarnate today? Where are you going to be? Do you think you're going to emancipate yourself and be in a spiritual colony, learning new things? Or you be like, oh my gosh, my loved ones, I have to be here. I don't know what else to do. So I have to be here. I have to stay there. And then we're there, not noticing that we have died and around loved ones, creating problems, diseases, like Divaldo Franco's brother. Yes, Divaldo Franco had physical paralysis because a brother that died in an accident stayed close to the family, and Divaldo is a medium. He started feeling the same um, symptoms of paralysis. Okay, so how many of us experience several things due to spiritual symbiosis of spirits? You want to know more about this? Read the book And Life Goes On or Sex and Destiny by Andrea Luiz. Sex and Destiny by Andrea Luiz shows to us how two people who think alike are in a spiritual symbiosis. They have sex together, they eat together, they drink together, and the discarnate spirit actually becomes the owner of the house, spiritually speaking. Can you believe it? It's true. Okay, so let's go back. He's going to now dive our understanding into this so-called spiritual symbiosis. So let's see what he says. He tells us, spiritual symbiosis. He talks first about useful symbiosis. Let us review, therefore, the symbiosis between the plant, for example, that exists between the algae and the fungus in the sphere of the lichens, in which the filaments or hyphae of the fungi intrude the cells of the algae and project them in within certain appendages, equivalent to complicated ostoria, making the suction of the organic matter that algae produces through photosynthesis. Look at this beautiful picture. It's about the fungi connected symbiotically to the algae, okay? The plants. And then how they live together. They exchange elements. Like Andrea Luiz says, the fungi will help the algae protecting it from the loss of water, okay? And they will exchange elements like water, minerals, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, okay? And then later he's gonna say, oops, okay, what else does he say? Oh, wow. Hold on a second. We're waiting for the slides to pop up. There is a little lag, and here we are. So bottom line for us, he's going to tell us about this exchange. Why is this important? Because we're going to see later that Andrea Luiz is going to say, just like in nature, we also do the same. So he talks now about exploratory symbiosis. He says, however, beyond this phenomena, in which symbiosis is simple and useful, we have the unpleasant occurrences such as the orchid mycorrhiza, where the fungi shows up invading the plant's root, in which case the plant assumes abnormal attitude to adapt itself to the disposal of the assailant, finding sometimes death when it persists over this or that conflict to the necessary combination. It's a form of parasitism, okay? But for us here, what do we need to observe? In several areas in nature, the same happens. What is important for us now to observe is here the symbiosis of the minds. Okay? He says, similar processes of association appear largely employed by the discarnated mind, still scared in the existence beyond the grave. Frightened before the unknown that cannot be readily understood, the discarnate spirit takes advantage of the receptivity of those who mourn their loss and delay attached to those they love the most. What is he saying? Attachment and fear that are driven by ignorance will create this symbiosis of the mind. So where does it mostly begin? In the afterlife. Okay, so I'll keep both slides here for us to break it down together. Ask this question. Let's ask this question, okay, for ourselves. Ask this question for us. Do you think you'll be scared in the afterlife? Because when we're scared, we tend to fear, protect ourselves. And what do? We go right next to those that are familiar to us. And then, because those are still longing for us, we create this symbiosis. Is it good or bad? It depends. So Luiz is going to tell us more about the symbiosis of the minds. Okay? It's like the fungi that projects into the tissues of the dominant algae little pieces like appendages with which it sucks most of the organic elements assimilated by the algae. The spirit that is discarnated launches into the perispirit of the incarnated one, okay? Elongated rootlets, subtle levers of power, depriving them of vitality in lively exchange of forces. You want to see how this happens? Go to the book and Life Goes On. Have you read it? There is a lady there, the mother of, I forgot her name now, but Vera, the mother of Vera, Elise or Elisa, she is incarnated. Her husband died, but actually she misses a friend of the husband who also died. And she loved him. He actually didn't love her, but because she's the only one that longs for him, that loves him, sends vibrations, she attracts his company and they start living symbiotically. And you're going to read in the book And Life Goes On that Luiz explains that through the process that Elise is experiencing with the discarnate spirit, when they try to separate them, she dies because they are so interconnected. There's no way to separate them apart. So it's funny because many people observe their loved ones are going through true symbiosis and sometimes vampirism, which is the title of tomorrow's study. And they say, take the spirit away, free my loved one. Well, but your loved one is the one that is calling, that is actually willing to be that symbiotically attached, creating problems that will lead to death. He says it. He says it. And he says, as it takes place, between algae and fungi, the incarnated mind unconsciously surrenders to the discarnated one that controls the existence, temporarily suffering its influence to a certain extent, to a certain level. So he's telling us here about this exchange that becomes anchors us. It anchors us because we are no longer ourselves. Okay? High spirits don't do this. They don't. And now he's going to talk to us about the case of ostensible mediumship. Okay? He says, in which some minds, okay, some minds that are with us, they don't want us to study and free ourselves. That's why many people sleep when they're reading these books. Because these entities that are symbiotically connected to us, they don't want us to be free. They don't want us to be engaged in the good. Because if we do, they don't have anything to do. All right? So they keep people in strange cults, captive to fanaticism. So people are still stuck in their energetic envelopment. Okay? I think before we bring a little more, it's fair to ask this question. Do you think you're experiencing any type of spiritual symbiosis? Who is not, right? The question is, how do we evolve to a point where we are going to have good spiritual company and no longer people who are attached on us, clinging on us to that extent? What is the answer? The answer is here. Oh, the answer is here. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, it says to us, chapter 15, without charity there is no salvation. If you want to prevent spiritual symbiosis and or remedy it, we need to, one, take care of our fears, okay? Take care of our fears. Because fears connect us to others who are afraid as well. Fears, ignorance, attachment. And then we are juxtaposed symbiotically. Oh my gosh, nobody's gonna love me. And then I stay here, connected to this person. No good. We need to stay with those that really want to fly high with us. If they don't, we better move on. And I'm talking about friendships as well. Friendships. Yes, because true friendship helps us, moves us forward. But the friendship that deters us from, it's always like creating this mindset of fear, like, oh, but how are you going to live without me? No, 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 no. If we're not moving forward, don't use me as a crutch. Don't use me as a, and vice versa. We cannot use people out of fear. We need to always ask, how can I contribute to this person's life? And not be there just because we're afraid, so we better sit together, or we're going to be alone, so we better sit together, or we're going to be alone because what you have, I need, and vice versa. That's immature. The higher spirits, they are together consciously because they are producing together, helping people. And not because they're together because they are afraid. if they are not together, they don't live well. How many of us live miserable lives in relationships with friends, partners, etc., even relatives, because we are afraid? So deal with fear. Learn to work with fear and rid ourselves of attachments. Okay? Sunshine is asking, can the symbiosis also happen between two incarnates? Yes. Yes, Sunshine. You see, Andre Luiz in this chapter is explaining to us where it all begins. It begins in the afterlife. Because when we are primitive humans, we discarnate, we are aware of things, and we don't know what to do with it. So we're afraid, we stay in our tribe. Remember when we talked about soul and discarnation? Evolution and discarnation, when we're talking about the tribal times, we stay there, so the shamans, we feel the presence of loved ones, and there are people who say that the indigenous people were more spiritual. No, they were not more spiritual, because those who departed were deeply felt in their circles. Because of exactly the same mechanism of fear and attachment, and they cherished it because they needed to stay together out of survival, they could feel the exchange more completely. But that doesn't mean that as we evolved, we're less spiritual. That's a fallacy. Andre Luiz never said we're more spiritual, or neither Emmanuel or Spiritism. We're evolving to become more spiritual now. So we can continue the symbiosis when we incarnate. But look at the book Renunciation. The spirit Alcyone is elevated. She loves Carlos. He's incarnated. She says, I want to go there and help him. She incarnates, but she doesn't help him the way we believe. Oh, let's go there, get married, and I'll be your wife, and you'll be the crazy guy, and I'll be the wife. No, no, no. She says, I'll be here. I'll be supporting you, but you need to behave yourself. Read the book. She renounces her fears because she's more evolved, so she's not afraid. So she doesn't surrender to these relationships in the way that we traditionally would. Okay? A lot of food for thoughts. Today, I think the most important take-home message for us is let's manage our fears and see how we react when we are afraid. Because usually we create sick relationships out of fear and thus symbiosis, when not vampirism, which is tomorrow's chapter. 2, attachments, which is all about the ego. The more we work on thinking of others and less on ourselves, the better we'll be. Your life has problems, mine too, but if I stop to look at them, I won't do anything. I need to think of those who have more problems than I do. That's the take-home message. Teresa Castro is saying, so symbiosis is conscious in the spirit world, but unconscious for the incarnates? Kind of, yes. I want to generalize it, okay? And I would say the following. It's not 100% conscious in the discarnate realm because there are many spirits that are not fully aware that they have discarnated, but they are still around those who are alike or who need them. This completely changed the narrative that ancient tribes were more spiritual than us today. Yes, my friend, Jailton, yes, it's a fallacy. And I'm not dismissing the beauty of our spirituality back in indigenous moments. No, it was beautiful. We have a lot to learn. Yes, but we're evolving. And the reasons why the spiritual exchange was very intense at the time is because of the very explanation that André Luiz is giving to us. Afraid, they stayed in the tribe. They mingle, they interact as if they were still living, and they wanted to still go back very fast. They didn't know what else to do. Just to give us an idea, when you study the book No Solar in Brazil, um, they talk about the formation of the spiritual colony No Solar, right? No Solar was founded by Portuguese spirits in Brazil, in the spiritual realm, in the 1600s. So then you ask, were there spiritual colonies before? See, the spiritual expands. The spiritual colonies, they are expanding, and then physical cities expand. It's not the reverse. So when we have tribes, we don't need a complex spiritual colony to deal with an indigenous life. See? Think about this. And then we're going to understand that we evolve in the spiritual realm, and then we see the evolution in the physical. It's there and here. And remember, there are different layers, multidimensional experiences. Okay? That's it for now. Let's go back because André Luiz is going to tell us about other facets of this symbiotic, the symbiosis of the minds in mediumship, in mental illnesses, etc. Okay? So let's go back and see what André Luiz reveals to us. Now he says, he talks about hysteria and psychoneurosis, conditions of the mind in psychiatry, okay? He says, however, symbioses of this kind are also expressed in complex nervous diseases as hysteroepilepsy. Just so you know, nowadays in psychiatry we call psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, which resemble epilepsy, okay, but they are not really. So the connection of spirits with us, discarnates, may mimicking us conditions of the mind and the nervous system that we call mental illnesses, but not necessarily they are a reality. So now let's continue. He's going to develop it. And on the same track of symbiotic adjustment, we're faced on Earth here and there by the presence of psychoneurotic illnesses of the most extensive classification. Okay? The most extensive classification with extremely difficult diagnosis left to the most obscure mental pictures. Such entities are magnetized to the physiological panel and aggregated to it without a more dense physical body. So he's talking about, and I have to stop again. I'm sorry. I wish I could just go on and on with the slides, but I need to pause to break down for us, recap a little bit. Remember, the fungi and the algae. The fungi brings like roots into the algae, appendages, they are intertwined. The spiritual symbiosis happen mind to mind and perispirit to perispirit. creating physical changes. So we need to think what we're thinking. If you are addicted, you are not alone. And it's hard to break the bonds because there are physical connections. Perispirit to perispirit. So we need urgently to create healthy habits, or we're going to be creating spiritual symbiosis. Self-pity is so detrimental, says André Luiz in the book No Solar, that it becomes a condition of the mind. Oh, poor me, poor me, poor me, poor nobody. I am a child of God. Repeat to yourself. When times are hard, tell, I am a child of God. Look at yourself, embrace yourself and say, I am a child of God. I believe in the good. I believe in the good in me. I believe in the good in others. I believe in the good of everyone. I invest on the good. Fear dissolves because who is alone? Nobody's alone. And I need to produce and fructify where I am. There are people who are longing for things that passed away, or are dreaming about the future, but they are never in the present. I need to love the present. Make the present pleasant and say, I love it. One day this shall pass. I love it. And I'm going to cherish it, not in attachment, but in diligence. So then I become useful. And remember, our goal is to gain control of our spiritual body. Remember in the first chapter, when André Luiz was explaining to us about being co-creator, he said, right now, we're learning how to be good managers of our spiritual body and physical body. We don't know yet. So how do I become a good manager? By doing courses like this with André Luiz, learning the mechanisms, and thus understanding how we can be better managers of trillions and trillions of spiritual physical selves. Okay, back to André Luiz, because now he's going to explain to us mechanism of spiritual symbiosis. He says to us, they may often live in this way for a long time, psychically interlocked to their hosts, because the discarnated spirit begins to develop differentiated magnetic resources. Often, with best intentions, the discarnate subjugates the mental field of the incarnate, imposing on their crown center, the crown chakra, the substance of their own thoughts. The victim accepts it as if they were their own. Thus, in perfect symbiosis, they reflect each other, stationary both in time until the laws of life claim, by difficulty or pain, the imperative of change. Pause, reflection. That's the mechanism of spiritual symbiosis. Okay? Before we wrap up with the last two considerations by André Luiz, let us break down this mechanism of spiritual symbiosis here. So André Luiz is telling us, let's meditate together. Breathe in and out. Let's breathe in and out and meditate here. He says, often this will stay like this for a while. And he says that the discarnate is going to create resources magnetically, subjugating us, in that symbiosis. Look at the book Sex and Destiny. Let's read it. In the book Sex and Destiny, André Luiz says, Moreira, the discarnate, who is symbiotically connected to Claudio, the incarnated man, is home, the discarnate one. The incarnate comes from work, sits to relax, and then Moreira, the discarnate, comes and whispers, I want a drink. And he says, as if they were so interconnected, like a feet in a shoe. Claudio stands up, the incarnated one, walks towards the whiskey bottle, pours on a cup, drink it. Then a second discarnated spirit comes and says, me too, one for me. And then Claudio, the incarnated, feels like drinking more, doesn't know why, goes there, drinks more. And they're going to stay like this until pain or difficulty changes everything. And you see in the book how a dramatic scenario shakes up Claudio and transforms that symbiotic relationship with Moreira. Is Moreira a true obsessor? Not necessarily. They are symbiotically connected. Remember, there is equality of exchange in a way. In this case, we're not talking about vampirism, which is the topic tomorrow. We're talking about exchange. But if we don't watch out, it may turn into a vampirizing relationship. Okay? And that's why right now, André Luiz is going to lead us into what he calls unhappy symbiotic processes, which is vampirism, the topic of tomorrow. He explains to us by saying, in other circumstances, the symbiosis takes effect in unfortunate conditions in which the discarnated remains riddled with unhealthy hatred or perversity at the foot of their victims, inoculating them with lethal fluids, either by copying the action of the fungi that becomes the executioner of the orchid in the mycorrhiza, driving it to abnormal situations when it does not impose a slow death, copying the attitude of the invasive algae in the body of worms, leading them to long disruptions. That's he says he's going to talk about in the next chapter. So hold on, because that unhappy symbiotic process, which is vampirism, is going to be talked about tomorrow. Okay? Now I think Jailton is asking, what happens to this symbiotic? Let me see. What happens to this symbiotic? Let me see if I can get it. Connection when the incarnate discarnate and the discarnate still discarnate. When the incarnate discarnates and the discarnate is still incarnate. If you see the book, one of them, and Life Goes On, Jailton, at the chapter about Elisa and the man he's connected symbiotically to her, you see when she dies, because there is merit in the story, they disconnect both. But if that's not the case, which happens in different cases, they may stay interconnected for a while. And we'll see unhappy circumstances in those cases. I think tomorrow, when we talk about vampirism, we'll see more of that scenario. Okay? Thank you for asking the question. Finally, André Luiz is going to tell us about it's almost like a take-home message. He says, don't think that the concept we're studying is new. He wraps up the chapter by saying, spiritual symbiosis has remained among humankind since the remotest ages. in multifarious processes of conscious or unconscious mediumship, through which the so-called dead, traumatized or ignorant, weak or indecisive, agglutinate in large part to the habitat of the so-called living, sharing their existence to absorb part of their vitality, until the very incarnate spirits, with the strength of their own work, in the uplifting study and virtues acquired, offer material for broader meditations, enabling the necessary transformation, adapting to new ways, and accepting new responsibilities ahead of their own evolution towards the higher spheres. So, Andre Luiz is giving to us the tip of all tips. He's saying, we have been in symbiosis, but we want to be in collaboration, cooperation, and not in symbiosis. What do? He says we need to make an effort, be conscious, so work on our awareness. In a Spirit's book by Allan Kardec, we learn that the more we study about our life in the afterlife, the continuation of life, we become less attached, less selfish. And becoming less attached and less selfish, we raise our vibratory conditions, and we are no longer at the level of this symbiosis. So we need to raise our vibrations by doing the good, by seeking the good. Seeking means an effort. Feeling the good, visualizing the good, molding the good. And that doesn't mean people will applaud you or understand you. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you and I are making an effort to raise our vibration. So the more we study and feel the scripture, it's not enough to study, said Jesus. We need to feel it. There are many people who read and study, read and study, read and study, and they continue the same old. But am I changing, transforming myself? So in this chapter, Andre Luiz is inviting us to manage fears, attachments, and to think about what else we can do to raise our vibrations. Okay, friends? We thank the good spirits for the opportunity of studying together, humbling ourselves before the knowledge of the beyond, and being open to understanding more. We'd like that the vibrations of our togetherness be multiplied to the infinite, especially among those who are in greater need than ourselves. May also our homes be enveloped by your love, God, and may we be more diligent children in your universe. Thank André Luiz, Chico Xavier, Valdo Vieira, Emmanuel, and all the loving spirits in humanity who care for us. And so be it. A big hug to you, and God willing, we'll be back for chapter 15 on spiritual vampirism. Let us come with the blessings of God and study together. This is Evolution into Worlds at Kardec Radio at 11 p.m. Thank you, friends.